What happens when a music legend sits down for what should be a friendly chat, only to face disrespect and condescension from someone who clearly forgot who they were talking to? In just 34 seconds, one cutting remark would expose a host's true colors and trigger one of the most justified walkouts in television history. Rod Stewart arrived at the studio that morning, expecting a typical promotional interview. The rock icon had graced stages around the world, sold over 100 million records, and earned the respect of generations. But respect was the one thing he would not find on Lorraine Kelly's set that day. The show opened with the usual pleasantries. The studio lights gleamed off the polished desk as Lorraine Kelly smiled for the cameras, her panel members seated beside her. To her left sat Marcus Webb, the show's resident entertainment correspondent, and to her right, fashion commentator Sienna Clark. Both seemed eager for what they assumed would be a lighthearted segment with the legendary musician. Rod walked onto the set to applause, settling into the guest chair with the ease of someone who had done thousands of interviews. He wore a sharp blazer, his signature hairstyle perfectly in place, and he greeted everyone with genuine warmth. "Rod Stewart, welcome to the show," Lorraine began, but there was something in her tone, something dismissive. "So lovely of you to squeeze us into your busy schedule." Rod smiled politely. "Happy to be here. Thanks for having me." "Well, we are just thrilled," Lorraine said, exchanging a glance with Sienna that didn't go unnoticed. "I mean, it's not every day we get someone from, well, to your era on the show." The first jab landed subtly. Marcus shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "My era." Rod's smile tightened slightly, but he maintained composure. "Music doesn't really have an era, does it? Good songs are good songs." "Oh, of course, of course." Lorraine waved her hand dismissively. "I just mean, the younger audience might not be as familiar. But that's fine." "That's absolutely fine." Sienna jumped in, perhaps trying to smooth things over. "Rod, your new album has been getting wonderful reviews." "Thank you," Rod replied, his posture straightening. "We worked really hard on it. The band and I spent months getting every track just right." "Months," Lorraine repeated, a smirk playing at her lips. "Must be nice to have that kind of time. I suppose when you're at a certain point in your career. There's no real rush anymore, is there?" The camera caught Rod's expression shift. His jaw tensed. "I wouldn't say that," he responded carefully. "Creating quality music takes time, regardless of where you are in your career." Sure, Lorraine said, leaning back in her chair with an air of superiority. "But let's be honest, Rod. You're not exactly competing with the Harry Styles and Dua Lipas of the world anymore. This is more of a legacy project, isn't it? For the fans who remember you?" Marcus actually flinched. Sienna looked down at her notes, clearly uncomfortable. Rod's eyes narrowed. "Remember me? I sold out arenas last year. Real arenas, not half-filled theaters. People of all ages." "Did you, though?" Lorraine's tone dripped with condescension. "I mean, really? Because from what I understand, it's mostly the older crowd, isn't it? The nostalgia circuit." "Lorraine," Marcus tried to interject. "I actually read that his tour numbers were—" "Marcus, please." Lorraine cut him off without even looking at him. "I'm having a conversation here." She turned back to Rod. "Look, there's no shame in it. Everyone gets older. Your voice certainly has. We all heard you at that charity thing last month. Bit rough around the edges, wouldn't you say?" The studio went silent. Even the crew behind the cameras seemed to freeze. Rod leaned forward slowly. "Excuse me?" "Your voice, darling," Lorraine continued, apparently oblivious to the line she was crossing. "It's just not what it used to be. That's natural. Father Time catches up with all of us. Well, most of us." She touched her own face as if to suggest she'd somehow escaped aging. "My voice is fine," Rod said, his tone hardening. "I've been singing professionally for over 50 years. I think I know my instrument." 50 years, Lorraine laughed. Exactly my point. 50 years of wear and tear. Look, I'm just being honest here. Someone has to be. Your newer stuff, it's just not at the level of your old hits. Maybe it's time to just, rest on those laurels? Do the greatest hits tour thing and call it a career? Sienna looked horrified. Lorraine, I don't think... Sienna, honestly, must everyone interrupt me today? Lorraine snapped at her own panelist. I'm trying to have a frank discussion with our guest. A frank discussion? Rod's voice rose slightly. Is that what you call this? Because from where I'm sitting... Sir, this feels like you trying to tear down someone who's accomplished more in music than you ever will in broadcasting. Lorraine's face flushed. Oh, here we go. The fragile male ego can't handle a woman asking real questions? Real questions? Rod shot back. You haven't asked me a single real question. You've just been insulting me since I sat down. Marcus tried again. Maybe we should talk about the album tracks. I personally loved the third song. Marcus, for the last time, I am conducting this interview, Lorraine said sharply. Then she turned back to Rod with a sickeningly sweet smile. You know what your problem is, Rod. You can't accept that your time has passed. The music industry has moved on. The world has moved on. But you're still here, clinging to relevance. The statement hung in the air like poison. Rod stood up slowly, his hands gripping the armrests of the chair. You know what, Lorraine? I've done thousands of interviews in my life. Thousands. With journalists who actually respected the craft, who asked thoughtful questions, who treated their guests with basic human decency. And then there's this. Oh, are we being dramatic now? Lorraine's voice was mocking. Going to storm off because someone finally told you the truth? The truth? Rod's voice was steady, but filled with quiet fury. The truth is, you're a small person who gets off on trying to make others feel small. The truth is, you have no idea what it takes to create something lasting, something meaningful. The truth is, I came here to talk about music, and instead I walked into an ambush by someone desperate for ratings. Lorraine's face went red. How dare you? This is my show. My show. Then you can have it, Rod said simply. He reached up and unclipped the microphone from his lapel. Because I'm not staying here to be disrespected by someone who wouldn't know real talent if it sang her a lullaby. You can't just leave, Lorraine sputtered, her composure cracking. We're in the middle of... Watch me, Rod interrupted. He placed the microphone on the desk with deliberate care. You want to know why my career has lasted 50 years? It's because I respect music. I respect my fans. I respect myself. 3 things you clearly don't understand. Sienna had tears in her eyes. Marcus looked like he wanted to applaud, but didn't dare. This is outrageous, Lorraine said, standing up now too. You signed a contract. You agreed to be here. I agreed to an interview, Rod corrected her. Not a roasting. There's a difference. Maybe you should learn it before you book your next guest. Oh, please. Lorraine's voice turned shrill. You're just like all the other washed-up stars who can't handle criticism. Thin-skinned and pathetic. Rod paused at the edge of the set and turned back. His voice was calm, measured, devastating. You know what's pathetic, Lorraine? Needing to tear someone down to feel important. I genuinely feel sorry for you. I've met thousands of interviewers, and you're the first one who seemed to actually hate the person sitting across from her. I don't hate you, Lorraine protested, but her voice wavered. I just don't think you're as relevant as you believe you are. And I don't think you're as important as you believe you are, Rod replied. But the difference is, I don't need to prove it by attacking you. I can just walk away. Marcus finally found his voice. Rod, mate, for what it's worth, I think you're brilliant. Always have been. Rod nodded at him gratefully. Thank you, Marcus. That means something. Marcus, you're fired, Lorraine snapped. No, he's not, Rod said firmly, because if you fire him for showing basic decency, every musician in the industry will hear about it, and good luck booking guests after that. Lorraine opened her mouth and closed it again, clearly calculating. Sienna stood up suddenly. I think Rod's right. This has been uncomfortable to watch, Lorraine. You crossed a line. Oh, not you too, Lorraine groaned. Am I surrounded by traitors? You're surrounded by people who recognize bullying when they see it, Sienna said quietly. Megan, this was bullying. Rod picked up his jacket from the back of the chair. I've been in this business long enough to know the difference between tough questions and malice. This was malice, pure and simple. You're going to regret this, Lorraine threatened. I have influence. I can make sure every talk show in the country knows you're difficult. Rod actually laughed at that. Difficult? I've been called many things, love, but difficult isn't one of them. Ask any host I've ever worked with. Ask Graham Norton. Ask Jonathan Ross. Ask anyone who treats their guests with respect. They'll tell you I'm a pleasure to work with. The common denominator here isn't me. It's you. The crew members were exchanging glances. A camera operator actually nodded in agreement. This is my reputation on the line, Lorraine said, and her voice rising to near hysteria. You can't just humiliate me like this on my own show. I didn't humiliate you, Rod said, his tone almost gentle now. You did that yourself. I just refused to participate in it. He walked toward the studio exit, his footsteps echoing in the suddenly silent space. Fine, go, Lorraine shouted after him. See if I care. We don't need you. We don't need has-beens who can't take a joke. Rod stopped one more time, his hand on the door. It wasn't a joke, Lorraine. Jokes are funny. What you did was cruel. And the sad thing is, you don't even see the difference. Get out, Lorraine screamed. Just get out. Already gone, Rod said simply, and pushed through the door. The studio remained in shocked silence. Lorraine stood at her desk, breathing heavily. Her carefully constructed television persona shattered. Marcus and Sienna sat frozen, unsure what to do. A producer's voice came through someone's earpiece, audible in the quiet. We're cutting to commercial. Now. Lorraine sank into her chair as the red recording light went off. Her hands were shaking. That was, Marcus began carefully. That was really unprofessional, Lorraine. Oh, shut up, Marcus, she muttered. No, he said, surprising himself with his own firmness. I won't shut up. He was a guest. He came here in good faith. And you attacked him. Why? I was trying to ask hard questions, Lorraine said weakly. Those weren't hard questions, Sienna interjected. Those were insults dressed up as questions. There's a difference. Lorraine looked up at them both, and for a moment, something like realization flickered across her face. But then her expression hardened again. You're both overreacting. This is television. Sometimes things get heated. Heated is one thing, Marcus said. What you did was something else entirely. In the hallway outside, Rod was met by his manager, who had watched the entire thing unfold from the green room monitor. Well, his manager said, that was something. She gave me no choice, Rod replied, his adrenaline still pumping. I wasn't going to sit there and let her disrespect me like that. I know, his manager said, and for what it's worth, you handled it perfectly. You kept your dignity. Did I, though? Rod asked, suddenly tired. Or did I just give her what she wanted? A scene? Drama? You stood up for yourself, his manager said firmly. That's never the wrong choice. Back in the studio, the production team scrambled to figure out how to fill the remaining airtime. Lorraine sat at her desk, reapplying lipstick with shaking hands, trying to compose herself before they came back from commercial. What do we even say? Sienna asked quietly. How do we explain this to viewers? We don't, Lorraine said curtly. We move on to the next segment. Pretend it never happened. You can't be serious, Marcus said. People will talk. This will get out. Then let it, Lorraine snapped. I'll spin it. Temperamental celebrity walks off set. It's not exactly unheard of. But that's not what happened, Sienna protested. You provoked him. Deliberately. That's your opinion, Lorraine said coldly. The floor manager gave them a 30-second warning. Lorraine straightened her shoulders, fixed her smile, and prepared to face the cameras again. But in that moment, sitting at her desk, with her panelists looking at her with barely concealed disappointment, something shifted. The studio felt smaller somehow. The lights seemed harsher. The smile she wore felt heavier than it ever had before. Marcus leaned over to Sienna and whispered, I'm updating my resume tonight. Sienna nodded, almost imperceptibly. Same. The red light came back on. Lorraine's camera, ready smile returned. Welcome back, she said brightly, as if nothing had happened. Now, up next, we have a wonderful cooking segment. But her voice lacked its usual confidence. Her hands fidgeted with her note cards, and somewhere in the back of her mind, she heard Rod's words echoing. You're a small person who gets off on trying to make others feel small. The show continued, but everyone in that studio knew something had fundamentally changed. A line had been crossed, a mask had slipped, and no amount of professional polish could put things back the way they were. Outside the building, Rod climbed into his car and let out a long breath. His phone was already buzzing with messages from friends in the industry who had somehow already heard what happened. News traveled fast. He looked at himself in the rearview mirror. His face was flushed, his heart still racing. But there was something else there too. A sense of relief, of self-respect maintained. You did the right thing, he told his reflection. And deep down, he knew it was true. Because there are some things worth more than publicity, more than being agreeable, more than playing the game. Dignity, self-respect, the refusal to be diminished by someone else's need to feel superior. He started the car and drove away from the studio, leaving behind the chaos he had unwittingly created simply by refusing to accept unacceptable treatment. In the years Rod had spent in the spotlight, he had learned many lessons. But perhaps the most important one was this. Sometimes walking away is the most powerful thing you can do. Not out of weakness, but out of strength. Not because you can't handle criticism, but because you know the difference between criticism and cruelty. And on that day, in that studio, Rod Stewart had drawn a line. He had said, without ambiguity, that he would not be disrespected. Not for ratings. Well, not for entertainment. Not for anything. It was a moment that would be discussed, debated, and dissected. But for Rod, it was simple. He had walked into that studio as a legendary musician with decades of achievements, and he had walked out the same way, with his integrity intact. Lorraine Kelly, meanwhile, sat at her desk as the show rolled on, segment after segment, smile after smile. But something had been lost that day. Something that no amount of spin or explanation could quite restore. The respect of her panelists, the trust of potential future guests, and perhaps, most importantly, her own certainty that what she had done was justified. Because deep down, in a place she would not let herself examine too closely, she knew the truth. Rod Stewart had not been difficult. He had not been temperamental. He had not overreacted. He had simply refused to play along with her game. And in doing so, he had held up a mirror that reflected something she did not want to see. The show ended on schedule. The credits rolled. The studio emptied. But the impact of those intense minutes would linger far longer than anyone anticipated. Sometimes the most dramatic television moments are not the ones that are planned or scripted. They are the ones where real emotions, real tensions, and real consequences collide in front of rolling cameras, where the carefully maintained illusion of control shatters, and what remains is raw, unfiltered truth. And the truth that emerged from that studio was clear. Rod Stewart had faced disrespect with dignity, insults with integrity, and had walked away with his head held high. He had shown that even in an industry that often demands you swallow your pride and smile through anything, there is still room for self-respect. There is still power in saying no. There is still strength in walking away. The legendary musician had given one final performance that day. Not a song, but a lesson. A masterclass in maintaining grace under pressure, in recognizing when a situation has become untenable, and in having the courage to remove yourself from it. It was not the interview Lorraine Kelly had planned. It was not the publicity Rod Stewart had expected. But it was real. It was powerful. And it was a reminder that behind the celebrity, behind the fame, behind the carefully crafted public personas, there are real people with real feelings and real limits. And when those limits are crossed, when respect is abandoned, when basic human decency is forgotten in pursuit of a moment or a rating or an agenda, sometimes the only appropriate response is to stand up, speak your truth, and walk out the door. Rod Stewart did exactly that. And in doing so, he reminded everyone watching what true professionalism actually looks like. Not blind compliance, not swallowing every insult with a smile, but knowing your worth, respecting yourself enough to demand respect from others, and having the integrity to act when that respect is not forthcoming. The microphone he left behind on that desk was more than just a piece of equipment. It was a statement, a symbol, a final word that spoke louder than any argument could have. It said, "I will not participate in my own diminishment. I will not enable your cruelty. I will not sacrifice my dignity for your entertainment." And that message resonated far beyond the walls of that television studio, reaching everyone who had ever felt belittled, dismissed, or disrespected, and wondered if they had the right to walk away. Rod Stewart showed them they did, and sometimes that is the most important performance of all,